Welcome to a GBA ranking video. If you don't know what the GBA is, the GBA is a competitive Pokemon league. This season, 14 teams drafted 10 Pokemon each, 1 Mega per team, and they go at it week to week with the foreknowledge of what their opponents are bringing and go head-to-head in a traditional sports league style leading up to playoffs and finals matches throughout the season. This video is going to go through the teams and give you kind of a breakdown of what's been going on in the past week and the general season for them and where I think they stack up as far as power goes. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like, comments, and things like that to help me improve the videos, make them better. And if you have any questions or interested in the GBA, please leave a comment below. Check out the links in the description and go check out the other GBA videos. And we're having a lot of fun this season. That said, let's go ahead and jump right into the rankings. Despite losing their first match of the season, the Arizona Deoxys still stay at number 1. It's really hard to move down a team that's played as well as they have as consistently after losing a match 1-0 with 1 HP on the other player's side. You can't really say it was a blowout. You can't really say they did anything wrong. They just got slightly outplayed, and that's all it takes to get a loss in Pokemon. You're going to see a lot of teams that came in this week with some serious problems, and they lost because of one bad mistake that boned them the entire match. That wasn't the case for the Deoxys. They just came out and they played a game, and they happened to lose on some number rolls, and sometimes that's how it goes, you know. You just lose because something doesn't go your way or something is slightly better than you. And I think this week the Steelix may have just played a little bit better, but, you know, even that's up for debate. It could have all just come down to damage rolls, really. When you consider, again, they lost by 1 HP. That's just a rough loss to come from. But I don't think it's enough to move them around. There isn't too much to say about the match besides it's a great match. You should absolutely go watch it. Very much like the Arizona Deoxys commentary, the Steelix commentary isn't going to have too much to say, as this was just a very intense back and forth match. Right now it's standing to be the game of the season. It's definitely the game of the week by far, as it's just a solid game of Pokemon. No incredibly standout plays, a little bit of hacks that definitely help the Steelix. But, you know, that's part of the game, and it doesn't matter if you don't capitalize on it and play well around and, you know, during that hacks, and that's what he did. Swaggleless put in massive work. He's playing his teams really well, and it just shows. There's no reason to believe that they aren't the top team in their particular conference and that they don't have the potential to be the top team in the league, besides being a little bit short on power. But as we've seen week after week, Swaggleless managed to actually come in and take down bigger teams with greater power just with the things that he has, and that's a testament to the guy. He's battling like no one else in the league given the disadvantages and team structure that he might have, and that's saying something. He absolutely at this point deserves the number 2 spot. Sharpedos are going to shoot back up to number 3 this week after dropping down. A real turnaround in the way he handled the loss of momentum after a disconnect. It could have been another bad week for Tom after the disconnect. It could have very easily fallen apart, but a couple of days break, coming back in with a fresh set really helped him out here. He kind of had the mental mind state of what to do. Unfortunately, he's not going to have that advantage every week, so it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But just the fact that this week he seems to have kept his composure a lot better and used it to keep in his opponent's head stands to move them back up. They have the power, they have the defense. It really just comes down to more consistent, thorough gameplay. And I think if he can maintain that, then they'll have a well-deserved hold in the area that they're in. As far as power rankings go, I don't ever see them dropping too far down, and I think they could move back up if he keeps playing well. Hopefully he doesn't have any more disconnects in the future, as it seems to be a pretty volatile thing in his gameplay. The Sox stay where they are this week at number 4. There's not a ton to say about this match. It's solidly played. It's not the best playing we've seen out of the Red Sox. It's not the worst playing we've seen out of the Red Sox, obviously, as they won the match. He brought the right pokes. He played the right plays. He got a lot of good hacks going his way, and he won the match. They're going to stay where they're at.
and that's really all there is to say about that.
This week, coming in at number 5, the Oklahoma City Thunderous, which is a pretty substantial drop for them, kind of mirroring last week's drop for the San Jose Sharpedos after they had a disconnect and then failed to recoup and recover from that loss in momentum and capitalize on a match. The Thunderous seem to have done the same thing this week. They had a very long match and it disconnected about 38 minutes into it, had to reschedule the match, and when they came back, the Thunderous just didn't bring the same level of gameplay. Made some very bad mistakes, switching the Infernape in on an air slash, not bringing a specially defensive Hippo to take on specifically the Zard Y, which it very well could have. Not so much for controlling the weather, but just as something to take the hits. It's a bummer. It's a good team. It's a good coach. I think he had a bad week. I think last week wasn't a super impressive week, and this week was an unimpressive week, effectively. So they're going to drop down a little bit. The Pellbirds have finally seemingly caught up with the rest of the league as far as team familiarity and catching on to the scheming and planning phases of every week battle and just using the format to their advantage. Great example of that obviously is this week running the Power Herb Solar Beam Talonflame specifically for Quagsire. If you don't know, that is a one-hit KO. If you really want to make sure you can guarantee, you just throw about 24 special attack EVs on there with a neutral special attack nature, and you're fine. And that was a great play by them, great thought process. Even though they didn't bring Quagsire to the match, it still goes to show the Pokemon's adapted to the format. He's getting used to this team and covering the weaknesses of his team, and that's really good. With a powerful team like he has, they don't have a ton of weaknesses, but the ones they do have are pretty glaring and pretty bold. In this instance, a huge water weakness. But he planned for it. He brought his T-Tar to help control the weather and shut down the rain, even though the rain never really got going for the Leafeon. And you know what? He just made it work. He played smart. He played well, and he got the win. The team's going to move up, and they're back to their formerly impressive start before the beginning of the season. And you'll probably see them fluctuate around where they're at and possibly move back up into the top 4 sometime before the league. I definitely think they're probably the top 2 teams in their specific conference, and just a really good match this week from them. The Sawsbucks dropped to number 7 this week. They're on a losing streak, and a lot of other teams around them are on a winning streak or had some pretty impressive wins and have all gone up. So unfortunately, they have to go down. I still think that they're definitely changing a lot of the things that they had problems with last season and are improving as a team, but sometimes you just stumble, and this week had one major stumble in. He didn't bring Scarf Greninja. There was a lot of talk throughout the locker room amongst non-participating coaches throughout the week that Scarf Greninja would be a great bet, and even in his own video, Magnitude says originally that was the plan, and unfortunately he just had that last minute doubting his own thought process and changed it out, and unfortunately that cost him big, as Scarf Greninja could have easily taken out Darmanitan the first turn of the game and really just thrown Shady for a loop and affected the entire momentum. The Sawsbucks just need to get back to basics and believing in themselves and believing in the game plan. The game plan would have worked. Unfortunately, last minute audible and the panic screwed them over, and they're going to drop down this week because of it. The Nidokings are going to drop down some more to the number 8 spot. It's a little bit strange seeing last season's number 1 championship winning team drop down this low, but I think this season the Nidokings team just isn't as strong. You're also seeing them repeat a lot of the same things. He's pretty much brought a bulky Gyarados every single week, despite the fact that it's entirely capable of being a great offensive threat, especially on against several of the teams that he's gone up against. Also making some questionable plays on what he brought, fearing to bring Raikou just because of the single Thunderous, and not bringing other things like his own Gengar, which would do work against the potential 3 Psychic types and 1 Ghost type on the other team. I think you've seen some questionable calls. They're still playing decently, still playing well. You're seeing some innovation in things and a lot of forethought and planning in some respects. bulky Weavile running 60 HP EVs to give him enough life to live. Varying damage rolls on the Hariyama is actually pretty impressive, if not a little bit strange and eclectic. But unfortunately, it's just not enough at this point. I think Crobat for the win is going to have to start mixing up his set selection for his guys more than just the EVs and items he's packing, and really bring some surprising moves and different pokes than what he's bringing to complement the fact that I think his team's a little bit weaker this year than it was last year. The New York Yankees slide up a spot this week, going up to number 9. Shady played a good game against a team that's been doing really well in the league, despite the fact that the Sawsbucks seemed to be on a little bit of a downslope. It was still a pretty impressive win for him, especially coming off of his loss last week. In last week's video, I said Shady hadn't been doing his homework. He'd been bringing very standard sets and just kind of running off the power that the team had. And to be fair, he does have a very powerful team. This week, Shady actually did his homework. He did the calcs. He came in knowing the hits he could take, the damage he would do, and had game plans for a lot of things. It's also very fortunate for him that at the last minute the Sawsbucks didn't bring Scarf Greninja, as he may not have had a plan for that. But that would be theory mining at this point, because Shady did manage to have a plan for what they brought, and he managed to execute it and make it work. The Leafeon are going to drop, actually. The first week they haven't been at number 8 on the rankings. They made some good plays, and they played fairly well for what they did. I think a lot of the problem was at the team selection. Again, I think a lot of the expansion teams at this point seem to be struggling with it. The ones that are doing well are doing extremely well. The ones that aren't doing great are doing fairly poorly. And I think that's another example here. If you look at the team matchup, Kote has probably the second best rain option in the GBA, and he's got some really frightening things on it. And Pokemon and the New Orleans Pelipers actually only have one water resist on their entire team. Yet, for some reason, he's still focused on Mega Scizor. Mega Scizor, for the past couple of weeks, has been his win condition for every game. It's racked up pretty much all of the Leafeon's kills and been the main reason they've won. And it seemed like he went in trying to force that to happen again, and then when Mega Scizor went down, he just really didn't have anything else to work with or go to. It was a problem, when you have a great rain team and you have a team that can't handle rain, even if they do have an alternate weather, I feel like you should push that. You might be a slight disadvantage since they have auto weather and you have to run manual, but it's not really that hard when most of your team threatens out their auto weather user and you can just chip away and take it down instead of having to rely on that mega with, your best recovery option is Roost, which is going to take away from your killing power, which is what you need it there for. I think that's probably the thing that they need to look at. He says in his video that he needed to understand his win condition and he shouldn't have let his Scizor go down. And while Scizor definitely was important to taking down Sylveon, which didn't happen and is why Sylveon ran train at the end of his team, I think he also needs to look at alternate win conditions before coming into the match, because he could have had a very different setup and different plan to go at it. Had he not done that. Again, he played well, doing things like bluffing that he was a support set with Crocodile on the first turn with the rocks despite being Scarf, and actually bringing 2 rockers so that he could lure out the Fortress and kill it. Then when he thinks, oh, okay, they don't have rocks anymore, he can bring in his second rocker and set things up. That's a great play, and it's really smart thinking. It's just not quite all of there with the overall team construction and his objectives on how he's going to take the other team out. You got to look at that thing and you got to plan for it just a little bit better, unfortunately. Coming in at number 11, the Atlanta Lucius Fizz, riding high off that big win last week. He's going to come in, he's going to do damage. He's got the Pokemon, he's got the sets, he's ready for things. He's going to come out swinging, hit everything hard, and just do really well. I have absolutely no doubts about his performance this game. Look at him over there, just coming in, setting things up, taking the
middle roll with the Chandelure, then foddering it out later, bringing it back in as a perfect fodder setup opportunity, actually. That's textbook. That's why you save things for death fodder, so that Escavalier didn't get a free switch in and the Magnezone could easily volt switch out, which was a great momentum controlling play, bring in the Chandelure, die, then bring the Magnezone back in, trapping the Escavalier. It's trapped. It's going to go down. HP Fire coming right at you, and then it's not HP Fire. It's HP Ice. Fizz didn't check his HP, his hidden power, before the match. He gemmed it wrong, and he's gonna lose because of that. Pretty much killed all of his offensive momentum. He had to bring Keldeo in, even though it didn't outspeed. It got sacked, which let the Rhyperior get off a Rock Polish and Weakness Policy and sweep the rest of his team. That's a rough loss, you know. That's yeah. Sorry, Fizz. Number 11. The Escavaliers stay at number 12 this week for me, despite getting their first win in the season. I think it was a good win for them. I think Nexus played reasonably well. You know, he actually did his research this week, calcing out the Rock Polish on Rhyperior, making sure he could outspeed things. But he still made a couple of the same mistakes that I saw last week, like knowing the Magnezone would come in on Gardevoir and not packing the HP Fire for just easy chip damage, or HP Ground for a lot more damage. It's just little things like that really need to be picked up. When he says in his commentaries that, you know, he predicts these plays, that should have been implemented earlier on in the team building and set building phase, in my opinion, if he wants to go further in the league. I also think he had a lot of help getting this win from Fizz screwing up that hidden power, and it absolutely did change the pace of the match. Not to take away the win from Nexus, the Weakness Policy Rhyperior worked. He did the math to make sure his Rock Polish would let him outspeed pretty much everything, and he did win with it. That's good enough. You know, it's not the most impressive win in the world, but it is a win, and hopefully it helps him get a more positive attitude and build up some more wins throughout the season. Right now, they are going to stay at 12th place for me, however, just because I still think he has one of the weaker teams in the league, and he still needs to adapt to the format a little bit more. The Jasmine finally moving up from the last place spot. And it's been very hard to have them there the entire time because I think Cougar's a great battler. I think in all of his battles, he's actually done a very good job with the team he's brought. I just haven't really agreed with the teams that he's been bringing, mostly because I didn't agree with a lot of his draft choices and concept overall. But I think this week he finally showed up with some solid offensive options with Mega Zam, Gallade, more offensive Zapdos, and, you know, offensive Whimsicott, and he balanced it out with his normal defensive units, and he actually did take one very possible and arguably the stronger component of his opponent's team and planned for it when he planned for Deathstroke and the Grand Bulls to bring Rain. Unfortunately, they brought Sun, but fortunately enough for him, they didn't bring Knockoff, and Chansey pretty much shut down the entire team very handily at that point. They were able to just spread status around, take things out, pick them apart one by one, use what offensive options they had to wear things down, and then just slowly degrade them with his incredible bulk of his team. It was a good play. I really just enjoy the team composition of this week's Jasmine a lot more than I have the other weeks, and I think if Cooper can keep bringing that kind of team to the playing field, it'll help him out a lot, and we could be seeing more wins out of the Jasmine. The Grand Bulls come in and last place of the week. Obviously, their 0-4 team. They had a bad week this week. Really unfortunate that they didn't bring Knockoff. Of course, that's a very visible problem when you look at your opponent's team and he has a Chansey. You should be aware of Knockoff. You should be packing it because that's really the only way you're going to take it down on a team that doesn't have any kind of strong physical fighting type. Some Psyshocks may help here and there from Latios, but it wasn't going to be enough. Deathstroke really lost this one at the team preview, as he said outside of the match, and as Cooper covered in his version of the video. And that's unfortunate. Two really tough losses for the Grambles. I think they did a much better job of team composition these past few weeks, really kind of getting into a groove and an idea of what they need to do. But they've just made a couple of very basic mistakes, and it's really hurt them. Last place might be staying there for a little while.